Welcome to the Dynasty Dummies podcast. It has been brought to my attention that this is no longer a square dance. This is the Dynasty Dummies rookie hootenanny, and I have no business hosting, so I'm going to toss it over to J. Mike and get us into this.
So good to be back. Rootin', tootin', shooting, hootenanny up in this mug. I'm happy to be here. Zach, what's been up, man? How you feeling?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. Still grinding the rookie film. I still got quarterbacks and tight ends to watch. But Peter Howard tried to get me to talk about tight ends this week. I was on with him, and I told him I don't care. I don't care yet. I'm not there. You can't make me care about tight ends yet. Not when we still have wide receivers and tonight rookie running backs. And it's good to be back and talking with you about this stuff.
Bro, it is absolutely fantastic to be here. Like you said, running backs part 2 here with the Dynasty Dummies. And before we even jump into any kind of prospect talk or try to pick up the baton from where we left off, what's been interesting to you of late? What's really stood out to you? Is there anything that you feel like you have to get off your chest before we go head first into this next foray of running backs?
So it's always the 20 catch rule. I heard you said that last week, the Zach Reed rule. Peter called it that, and I don't want people to think that I've got something predictive because it's not. But the importance of pass catching, I cannot hammer that enough. And even if you don't believe in the 20 catch thing, let's just look real quick at Derrick Henry. And I know you and I messaged a little bit about this before, but Derrick Henry just had the 5th greatest season in rushing history in the NFL. The 5th best season ever. Okay. There are only 8 players since the NFL's inception that have rushed for over 2,000 yards. And Derrick Henry did that last year, and he still finished as RB3, 80 points behind Alvin Kamara. 80 points. He finished behind Kamara as the RB3 in half point by 50, and he finished behind Kamara in standard by 15. Okay, he had the 5th greatest rushing season in history, and he still in standard finished behind Kamara by 15. And in straight PPR, he actually points per game was closer to Chris Carson than he was to Alvin Kamara. Like, pass catching matters, and it matters so much. Stop chasing A.J. Dillon. Stop chasing the guys that you think are Derrick Henry. Stop chasing the guys who haven't done it before, because most of the guys who do it in the NFL have done it in college. Disappear. I disappeared, didn't I?
I've got you back now. Yeah.
Oh. All right. Where'd you lose me?
When you got into the stop chasings, when you were talking about the list of guys to stop chasing, man, that was such a good go. And then all of a sudden, like, everything froze. Like, you froze, and I was just like, "What is happening?"
I'll react that then. But I don't know how much stayed with.
Oh man, I don't either. That's a bummer.
YouTube and how much we lost, because probably if you did, I can re-rack it though. We're all good. So stop chasing A.J. Dillon. Stop chasing the guys you Henry. You even think it matters more than I can stress. This is, to quote the million, this is the way.
and I feel like it is an absolute. And before I even say that, let's take a step back, just so everyone understands what we're actually saying and what Zach is actually explaining. He is not saying Derrick Henry is not good at football. He is not saying Derrick Henry is not
Fantastic.
amazing. On the contrary, he is absolutely outstanding. And even in the midst of the heights of Derrick Henry, we're still chasing these guys who are catching many balls and have the skill set, and are not just the skill set, but they're having their NFL teams ask them to make these plays in the passing game. And that is a major differentiator in what we're looking for when these fantasy titles that we are chasing, with these rosters that we're trying to put together to string together these wins throughout a 16-week season.
Yeah, like from 2014, 2019, and this is when I've been tracking this stuff. I haven't done 2020. There have been 94 players in the NFL during that 5-year span that have had a season of 30 or more catches. 94. 17 of them did not have a 20 catch season in college. So that's like what, 85% of players that have a 30 catch season. And again, it's not predictive. I'm not saying that every single player who catches 20 balls is going to be receiving the NFL. Leonard Fournette can't pass. It's saying that it's a lot more probable that if you've caught 20 passes in college, and again, because the NFL is not particularly creative, they're not looking for players have the ability to catch the ball. Like, that's what they're looking for. And I mean, we have to take this into account. You've got, follow me, baby Yoda. Follow me. This is the way. Come on, Grogu. Like, let's go.
So, Mark tape 7:30. There's some of that comes through and some of it that doesn't. Your video's back now, which makes me hear you clearly, but a lot of that was just like in the ether, and I don't know if it is being caught by the recording,
Okay.
or if so. Yeah, just
as long as it's me, I'm okay with that, because I can re-rack me, but I cannot do a reasonable facsimile of you. I don't have the pipes.
Fair enough. All right. And with that, with Zach's, maybe that should be a thing now, Zach. Just Zach's weekly musings. We can find a much catchier title down the road, but after we get into what's really been eating at you, what's been intriguing to you, what's been exciting to you, I think this finally brings us to running backs part 2 here with the Dynasty Dummies Do-si-do, the hootenanny, if you will. And the first name this evening takes us directly to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, the running mate to your teetering RB1, RB2 in the class, Javonte Williams, his running mate, Michael Carter. We look at Michael Carter's career, and it's really interesting to be able to see him be somewhat the man in his junior season, where he gets the majority of the work. He gets over 1,000 yards rushing. He gives us 21 catches in his junior year. And then in his senior year, even though he had to share the majority of the workload with Javonte Williams, he was still wildly successful himself. Still someone who was giving you 8 yards a carry on 1,245 yards, 9 touchdowns on the ground, and still giving us the 25 catches that we like to see. So, Zach, walk us through Michael Carter and how you're viewing him currently within this class.
Project. Serious. Starts playing with its familiar driving electronic riff. And now, from North Carolina, Michael Carter, MJ, but the Tar Heels rank is picked up, especially and he also ran for 60 yards and a touchdown on 8 carries. You like that? It's going to be Carter plays bigger than his 5'8" frame would suggest. He runs inside with a combination of burst and slipperiness, and defenders rarely get a firm grasp on Carter. He is really, really adept at accelerating out of tackles. He's got enough speed to get the edge, and when he gets there, he uses pace and jump cuts to extend runs. And you mentioned he's a great receiver, utilizing his expertise as a kick returner to add yards after catch in short spaces. I really, really like a lot of what Michael Carter does.
You talk about some fancy footwork, some quick feet, and it's really interesting to be able to see him break off long gain after long gain after long gain, be able to get in space and do a lot of fun things. One of the few downfalls that you may see, and maybe you'll have more, Zach, but one of the few things that I saw that are a little bit of a hang up regarding Carter is that when you're tracking how many times he's tackled at the line of scrimmage or by the first defender at the line of scrimmage versus those long gains, if he's able to somehow beat the primary defenders there that are in the hole for him to have to evade, if he can beat them, then we're looking at typically long gains and chunks that we really like to see. But there are so many times where I'm watching him be tackled by the first guy or not quite able to evade that first player. And that's just one of the things that was really disheartening for me when we originally thought, hey, we don't know exactly how thick or how big he is. So he comes into the Senior Bowl, measures at, I think, 202, which I think was somewhat helpful for people to be able to know, like, okay, not as small as maybe he may look at times, but we see the jets, we see the big playability. Are there anything regarding his game that really detract from what he could be at the next level?
Yeah, and I think you hit it. Michael Carter's quickness can get him in trouble sometimes, especially on runs between the tackle. I think of John Wooden used to use a phrase, be quick but don't hurry, to describe the idea of being patient until the perfect moment to strike presents itself. And Carter really needs to take that to heart. He sometimes gets caught not letting his blockers establish that running lane before he turns on the jets. And that's when he gets caught in the backfield where he runs up on his blockers or they haven't quite opened that hole yet, and he gets taken down. And although Carter's really good in pass protection, sometimes he's slow to present to the quarterback, like that target after he's made a chip block and he gets out in the flat. And that, like, I don't love that aspect, especially if he's going to be a pass catcher at the next level. To me, all of this, Michael Carter's fate is going to be determined by draft capital. The NFL is going to tell us what they think of him. If he goes in the first 3 rounds, his ability to fit into that pass catching role becomes really intriguing because he presents as a pass catcher. Plus, he's got that rushing upside.
Do you think, and let me ask this, because we had mentioned last time when it came to Kenneth Gainwell about what the ceiling looks like and what we think that Carter can be at the next level. We know he's got the pass catching chops. We know he's got the quickness to hang. We know that in space he can be a real problem for defenses. Where, and I'm not trying to pigeonhole you into a place like what kind of player is Michael Carter going to be? Not that at all. Just from a standpoint of, if I'm looking in my early second rounds, is Michael Carter a guy that I'm highlighting like, hey, I want to see where he's going to be landing? Because if I've got an early second round pick, I want to be able to make sure that he's a guy that I have in my queue.
So I don't know if early second is going to be the place that I look for him, or if it's going to be a little later. But the real kind of situation and evaluation I have on him is, do you remember back, it was 4 or 5 years ago now, but when TJ Yeldon was coming out, and he had, it was the same kind of question whether or not he was going to be able to be big enough to come in and carry the load, but you knew he had receiving chops. When he got a shot in Jacksonville, he was fantastic. He had a 10 or 12 week stretch where he was a top 6 running back. And I see that upside with Michael Carter, but I don't believe that he's going to come in and command a backfield. I mean, he didn't even do that in college, and he's not what I would consider a prototypical NFL running back. So again, you're looking at a guy with pass catching upside, with the ability to give you a top 24 season just on that. And then if there is a way that he can kind of wheedle in, or there's an injury, or he ends up in a thin backfield, then you're looking at potentially a windfall with drafting him.
Yeah, and then at that point, we are, and I know you mentioned this with Peter the other day regarding Carter with Gio Bernard. We talk about forefathers, right? So Gio Bernard out of North Carolina, diminutive in size, but obviously gives you spots and spells where, hey, he can be a real cog on my team for a lot of fantasy success. So I think I'm excited to see what happens with Carter and where he ends up landing, because I think there's some value to be unearthed with wherever he goes, because he can pretty much be a piece of any kind of offense. So that's exciting. Very exciting. Moving forward, next up on our list here, Mr. Jermar Jefferson out of Oregon State. College Football Reference here has got him at 5'10", 217. Man, a freshman season that was one to remember. He gave you 239 attempts out the gate, over 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns, and per the Zach Reed rule, as a freshman, 25 catches for 147 yards. The next couple of seasons, we saw a little bit of turmoil. He only played 9 games in his season. Didn't quite get the
I'm losing you.
Efficiency and production that he was accustomed to giving from that first year. So Zach, Jermar Jefferson, a guy that I'm not sure everyone may be aware of in dynasty circles. Talk to us about what you think of Jermar.
The Jermar Jefferson, finding tape on Jermar Jefferson was an adventure. There was not a lot of Oregon State. We had to dig. We had to find some full games. I was lucky enough to have recorded a couple of those. I'm dating myself because I'm going to say TiVo, but I recorded some of the Oregon State games from this year, and we had to dig back and find some 2018 film on him too. But early and often, man, that's Jermar Jefferson. That was his success at Oregon State right out of the gate. He ran for 238 yards and 4 touchdowns in his second game ever with the Beavers. And from there, he became their bell cow, finishing his freshman year with 1,400 yards. And like you mentioned, 25 receptions on top of the 239 carries. Dealt with a foot injury in 2019 and obviously the COVID season of 2020. But I think the Jefferson airplane is poised to take off. Jefferson's acceleration is fast. He gets to and through the hole before first level defenders even know he's been there. And he's best when he can identify an inside running lane, make one cut to get there, and then use his speed. Jefferson is fast enough to get the edge, but it's not what he does well. He does most of his damage in the interior. And even though he's not a traditional space back, I think Jefferson is an adequate receiver. He's got the ability to make adjustments to poor throws. And he also is really good at being able to make those adjustments and keep his momentum going forward, which you like out of that running back position.
Jermar Jefferson, like you said, trying to find simply film on this guy right now. It is quite the challenge to all of our friends who are out there grinding these cut ups. Hey, little help, little more Jamar if you can find some, if you can unearth it. One of the things that I really am, and I did not expect this with Jamar Jefferson, and I went in not knowing a ton about him. His long speed is like scary good. And I don't know exactly how fast he'll run, but his ability to just break long plays, his ability to have that patience, and if we contrast that versus Michael Carter, the patience that Jefferson's able to run with and the burst that he leverages out of that patience is absolutely astounding. It's really cool to be able to see him probe the defense. It's interesting to be able to see him really be able to work in that space and not rush himself, not feel like he's got to try to make something happen for himself. But man, it's so much fun to be able to see him really work when he's got the opportunity. We're talking about Oregon State, not the greatest offensive line in the world, not the greatest set of recruits in the world, but we did watch Jamar Jefferson have a lot of success. With that said, Zach, I remember watching the 2020 Cal game, and I literally watched 5 straight plays where Jamar Jefferson was tackled at the line of scrimmage by a single defender. And I said, okay, I don't understand what's going on right now. Are you upset with your coach right now? Are you tired? Did you not sleep well last night? Like, what happened? That was one of the things that I saw on film that kind of bothered me when there was penetration. I don't know that the creativity was there that I would have liked to have seen him exhibit. But just take me through some of your concerns or just thoughts on Jefferson's shortcomings.
Yeah, his profile hits some turbulence when that initial hole doesn't open up quickly. And instead of pressing the line of scrimmage for another option, Jefferson hesitates, kind of looking for what should be there. And I think that's what you're seeing is that defender gets in and he's like, oh, well, there was supposed to be a hole, right there by the tackle. And now there's a guy there and I don't know what to do. And, instead of bouncing it outside, I think this lack of improvisation leads to Jefferson missing chunk runs, getting outside the tackles, because sometimes that's there and he was supposed to run inside and it just never materialized. And also, I don't like this about him. Jamar Jefferson will initiate unnecessary contact, and that led to a few fumbles over his career too. But that was something that, with John Kelly, I wasn't as hesitant about in his profile, but ultimately that was one of the big downfalls. And so that initiating contact for Jefferson gives me just a little hesitation on that profile.
Yeah, and the other thing is he does have some goal line back capabilities, right?
Yeah.
Short yardage, love. So if you're looking at him being a part of any kind of committee, you could see him being the touchdown scoring portion of the committee, even if the other guy's getting a bunch of the work in the 20s. So again, Jefferson's another intriguing prospect within this group to be able to look at. Let me ask you, when you put Jefferson in comparison to other classes, Zach, and I know that you've done this to some degree. How does he stack up, or what range of player is he somewhat looking at when we put him on the grand scale there?
So, I mean, he in this class, I have him at 5. In other classes, I mean, it's going to push him down because we've had some really, really good running back classes. And over the past 4 seasons, I have those grades kind of all done up. And to put it this way, Javonte Williams and Najee Harris are 7 and 8. So they're not even close to being in that. And this is from Saquon's class forward. So we're not even talking about the class with McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook and Chubb or no, Chubb was in Saquon's class. Sorry. Dalvin Cook and yep. The guy that just scored the touchdown in the Super Bowl there.
Leonard Fournette.
I could come up with Leonard Fournette. Yeah, and Leonard Fournette and that group. So he's down there a ways. But again, this class is not what I think what everybody is pushing it to be. I really am hesitant to fall in love with this class. I think there are 3 wide receivers that I love. There are probably 6 wide receivers that I like, and 2 running backs that I really like, and ETN, who I am hoping I like. I mean, like I think he's interesting, and Gainwell, but beyond that, like Jefferson is fine. There's a good chance he's going to get pushed down rookie draft boards because this is a wide receiver rich class. He could be an interesting name to remember, especially if he lands in a fluid situation. If he lands in someplace like Seattle, if he lands in someplace like San Francisco, if he lands in someplace like Arizona, where you've got a chance that he can be the do-it-all back, he can do it all.
So Jamar Jefferson, we are looking at him as being a very intriguing player, talented player, tempering expectations for what he can be, and seeing where we can get him in these upcoming drafts. Next up on the docket for this evening, we are looking at one Kylan Hill out of Mississippi State. Again, Sports Referencer has him at 5'11", 210. A punisher of defenders was one of my major points that I remember writing down for Kylan. Punisher of defenders. We see him get work every year for 4 years. We're looking at him having full 4 years there, senior out of Mississippi State. Highlighted season was last season, where he goes for 242 attempts, 1,350 yards, 10 touchdowns. And he did give us a couple seasons of over 20 catches, which is nice to see. Kylan Hill didn't quite finish this year as one may have hoped. I think there had been reports of friction with the new coach, Mike Leach. There was obviously some friction from his exploits in off the field stuff, philanthropy, if you will, with the issue of the Mississippi State flag and some other things going on that only saw him get 3 games under his belt for the Bulldogs. Kylan Hill, powerful guy. Take us through what you see, Zach.
Yeah, some things are really simple. To make a great steak, you buy the best inch-thick ribeye you can find. You season it simply with salt. You pan-sear it hot and fast. To score fantasy points from the running back position, you identify players who can run routes out of the backfield. You be sure they're proven capable pass catchers, and you draft them. And I think that's Kylan Hill. He could probably lead a backfield. You mentioned he's 5'10", 215. He touched the ball over 250 times as a junior. I think Hill is a decent runner inside or on stretch plays outside of the tackles, and he's usually able to avoid initial contact with defenders with a jump cut, a quick change of direction. But to me, sometimes he feels like he's a lot smaller than he is. Sometimes he doesn't display that power to be truly effective inside. And I know you said that he punishes guys, and he does, but then he goes through stretches where he just is like playing like a scat back. I think his real strength is going to be his adeptness in the passing game. Hill is a really smooth receiver, and his transition from catching the ball going back to a runner is so quick. And that is huge, especially because once he's got the ball in space, Hill can make a defender miss and make him pay when that happens. I mean, he's able to roll up big yardage when you get him in space.
And that was the revelation this season, right? That was the revelation. That was the piece when Mike Leach is added as the coach there of the Mississippi State Bulldogs. You know he's going to be one to try to sling the ball around. And again, I said he had 2 seasons where he caught over 20 balls. Oh, spoiler alert. One of those seasons was this senior season where he played 3 games and caught 23 passes in 3 games. And that was the thing that I didn't know was a part of his game, Zach, that I thoroughly enjoyed. Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head, his transition from catching the ball so naturally, so easily. And even when you compare it to Travis Etienne, who's come so far in 3 seasons in terms of catching the ball and how much I like his ability to do that now, Kylan Hill, like when you watch it, it's just different.
Yeah.
The smoothness, the way that he's able to do it and be so clean in all of his movements, be efficient with that movement, is a real treat to see. The other thing that I want to highlight with him, as much as I enjoy Kylan Hill, and as much as because I think that he runs with good power, he runs with good pace, he exhibits good speed, he exhibits really nice burst at times to be able to hit holes and make things happen. He's a contact seeker, and that's nice and all when you are wanting to try to prove a point or you just want to run angry. That doesn't bode well for long fantasy careers, and it doesn't bode well for hopefully not seeing you off of the field or missing plays or missing games when you're consistently running to punish everyone at every turn you can. That was one of the things that I saw in his game that while it's fun to watch, it's not really ideal. He can cut to space. He can leverage good vision to be able to find creases and spaces to really exploit the burst. I think it's pretty special in this class. But what are some of your thoughts in reference to Kylan Hill and the things that may be holding him back?
So I have questions about Hill as a bell cow, like with the air quotes bell cow, because he tends to hesitate in short yardage situations, which I think is the place you can least afford to. You're trying to get that 1, 2, 3 yards, and if you're trying to be too fine with a hole, that's not great. He also falls into the trap of trying to atone for his last mistake. So if he missed a cut off tackle on the previous play, he'll often try to bounce it outside on his next carry, even if that's not there. So, it's one of those things where he's trying to make up for it. He's trying to do something right, but by trying to recapture that last play, it ends up kind of snowballing and making multiple plays. And look, Hill has tremendous athleticism, but when he tries to use it to jump over defenders, and you're going to hear me harp on this a lot, the risk just isn't worth the reward. Stop hurdling guys. That's the worst thing SportsCenter ever did was put guys on, jumping over players. And it goes all the way back to like Randall Cunningham. And I'm like, don't do that. You're going to get hurt. You're going to fumble. It's just a bad scene.
The one other thing I want to make sure that I get in here regarding Kylan Hill, and again, when I thoroughly enjoy watching him play football. One of the other things that I noticed before he's able to really get going at times, or even when he does, he takes a lot of steps to change direction.
Yep.
And I don't remember who it was last year that we talked about where you had said you had made some sort of comment regarding like a tugboat. To turning like a tugboat, and that saying stuck with me. Hill does that sometimes where it's like, okay, just cut. Come on and cut. Oh, wow. Yeah. That was a lot of steps for you to change directions. Wow. Oh, okay.
But there's something to be said for conservation of movement. Like that, yeah. If you take too many steps, that gives you the defense that much more time to react to what you're doing. It's
madness. Okay, I think that's enough. That's enough on Kylan Hill. Again, another guy that is probably pretty interesting in the class, and especially with the receiving chops that he's shown.
I think he may be like the back end, like the super silent steal of this draft, because DLF's got him right now at like running back 9. I mean, I've got him kind of in the middle, in that same kind of area, like 7, 8, like. He has some serious upside for where you're going to be able to draft him.
He's my 6 right now.
Yeah.
He's my 6 right now, and yeah, I really like. Again, we've highlighted a lot of his game that's really good, And he could, like you said, he could be a player. And I like the fact that he could be the A side of a committee, which would be good too. So next up on our list this evening, someone who the community has to some degree welcomed with open arms after being a newer player on the scene. Ramondre Stevenson, running back out of Oklahoma. They had him listed at 6 feet, 246 out of Oklahoma. And I believe at the Senior Bowl, he weighed in at about 227 pounds. So perhaps not quite playing. He's now weighing less than he played at, apparently, with all the reports and such. But Ramondre Stevenson, if you're looking at his actual physical profile from a production standpoint, it's not something that's going to be standing out to you as being wildly impressive. He appeared in 13 games in his first season at Oklahoma, which was his junior season, as he was a transfer out of the junior college ranks. 515 yards as a junior in this last season, 665 yards. Obviously, he shared a backfield with Kennedy Brooks, shared a backfield with the previously mentioned on our last show, Trey Sermon, and never quite reaching the Zach Reed rule of 20 catches. However, Zach, Ramondre Stevenson, people are excited.
They are.
Got a few nice things I want to say about him myself, but I want to give it to you first. First word on Ramondre Stevenson, Zach Reed, go.
The pride of Cerritos College, the Fighting Falcons, man. Ramondre Stevenson has taken kind of the road less traveled to get to the NFL. 2 years in JUCO, rolled up 2,000 yards in his sophomore season before landing at Oklahoma. There, you mentioned he played behind Trey Sermon and Kennedy Brooks for a season before Sermon transferred to Ohio State. Brooks opted out of the 2021 season. And even with that path to touches cleared, Stevenson ended up with a marijuana suspension for the first 5 games of the season, derailed the first, the half of his senior season. So, straight to the NFL. Here we go. It's impossible, though, not to be in awe of how well Ramondre Stevenson moves for a man of his size. Although his first season at Oklahoma, he was kind of stiff. His movement seemed kind of stuck. In 2021, all of that and those extra pounds melted away, leaving a powerful and deceptively quick inside runner. Stevenson has good contact balance. I think he's able to take a hit squarely, maintain his footing, and actually reframe his running lane and continue on, which is something interesting. You don't see that very often from runners, but he can do that. And that's especially valuable when you get him on the goal line. Stevenson also, I think, is more fluid as a receiver than I expected, and he's capable of being used in the screen game, being able to be used as a safety valve. I think he can also run a little bit of a wheel route and get out in space. Outside the tackles, Stevenson actually uses really good pace, and it's funny. Defenders, I think, see him as that big, and they underestimate his burst. And so when he slows down, they're ready for that hit, and then he takes off again. And I really like that part of his game.
Stevenson, we had an enigma last time we got together, and I think this is the enigma in this group is Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah.
I really like his ability to make plays on a consistent basis. I really enjoy his instincts, and I think that his feel for the game is really, really good, Zach. His ability to and again, to see a big body, be able to be patient enough, and then you watch him put his hand on the back of his blockers. He's looking and he's probing, and he does a very, very good job of cleanly picking his way through the defense to find space to run. And even when he's not able to break through, he will force his way through, or at least make you feel his love, as Adele would once sang. I think the drawbacks to Stevenson do lie with his lack of quick acceleration.
Yep.
While it's nice for his size, and this is where I don't want to take the cheese, Zach. And I want to sell the sizzle, as you say. I don't want to take this trap cheese because we watched him not necessarily have all the acceleration that we'd want him to see. And we did see him make some plays when bouncing it out to the outside. What I don't want to do is I don't want to automatically assume that because he shed even more of this weight, that all of a sudden he's gonna exponentially become quicker and have this burst that's just crazy bouncy and really becomes an asset to his game. Again, there's a ton of stuff that I like about his game. I love him as a playmaker, and I think he makes a lot of positive things happen. But I don't want to automatically assume, okay, wait, he's down to 227. What happens if he gets down to 220? What happens? Is he going to be Lev Bell? Is he going to be Lev Bell where he can look, kind of lethargic at times as a runner in college, but then all of a sudden bust out and be something that's – I don't want to take that cheese, Zach. So tell me, what are – again, I love his instincts. Just talk to me, Zach. Tell me about the things that hold you back with Stevenson.
He does. Stevenson walks that tightrope with his pace, and it can be a great weapon when a defender is not deceived by Stevenson's hesitation. He ends up kind of strafing parallel to the line of scrimmage until he runs out of space, and it stops being playing with pace. It starts being deliberately plotting to a loss. And that's, I think you nailed it, where it's not incredible burst, it's good burst for a big man.
Yep.
And if he doesn't fool a defender, then good burst for a big man is not fast enough to get by an NFL defender at all. Stevenson ends up being fairly fast. He's got the size that scouts are going to be able to dream on. And look, he put up his share of highlight runs in his past 2 years at Oklahoma. I think the big issue that I have with that is I think a lot of people are looking back to 2019 and seeing a lot of those long chunk runs. Well, he was doing that in the fourth quarter as the third running back in the game against whoever was rolling their scrubs out. So it wasn't like he was doing it in the first quarter because that was Trey Sermon and Kennedy Brooks. And he was kind of the end of the game cleanup. So to me, a lot of people are buying in, but Stevenson feels like a back that is going to get lost in the shuffle of the NFL, to me.
Yeah, and even when you think about Stevenson and what he offers, like out the gate, Stevenson seems like the player that that is somewhat in the mold of, or maybe teams will be looking at him like Zach Moss, in that decent hands. And I don't say that, I'm not saying that they play the same, but when I talk about their strengths, good power, shows good hands, and can get you short yardage goodness. And I don't want him to be pigeonholed as just like, hey, give me just this goal line short yardage person. I'm not going to pretend that he's in line for some sort of special role in the NFL. However, I think that's the thing. he can thrive as a change of pace, right? And normally we think of change of pace as, oh, then give me the smaller, the quicker guy in. Well, no, the change of pace can also be him being a change of pace back to change it up to be the hammer to someone else's lightning, if you will, or however you want to compare that. Good qualities as an athlete, able to show soft hands, a feel for the game that, again, I cannot say this enough. I think his feel it's so good to watch him play. And there's a serious amount of strength to his frame and like you said, good agility for his size. The draft capital could really disappoint us.
Yeah.
Right. But I think about if I am going to be paying a later round pick or even trying to gamble early third or something of that nature, and who knows what kind of hype will be built up. This is a guy that has soft hands and he's super strong, and it's definitely someone to monitor as we move forward through the process.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think that maybe for fantasy, the best thing that can happen is he doesn't get that first 3-round draft capital, which I don't think he will, because that's going to drop him down a lot of draft boards. And he's the type of player athletically that could make some noise if he got a chance to play. And so if you're taking a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick and dropping it on him, you have a chance to be happy. And if it doesn't hit, it doesn't matter. You're not taking him with your first that you need to be hitting on.
Indeed. And that closes this chapter of Ramondre Stevenson. We've got a couple guys left we want to get into this evening. And one of those is a guy right down the road here from me, Ian Hawkins. The scattest of scatbacks. 5'9", listed at 196, which I don't know about, but still 5'9", 196, running back out of Louisville. His best season was, it looks like, a redshirt freshman season where he gives you 264 carries, 1,500 yards on the ground, 9 touchdowns. The craziest part of his profile, though, Zach, is the fact that even with his size and with as bad as Louisville was, and I take a lot of pride in being able to crap on Louisville when I can, go Cats. But Hawkins never gave us really any kind of receiving chops or showed us anything exciting in the receiving game that we could really want to get behind someone of his stature, typically giving us in the NFL. And oftentimes you reference, if the NFL, they don't like new, right? They don't necessarily always like cutting edge. So if he's 5'9", 196 and he's not going to be asked to be catching the ball, I don't know what we're looking at here, but we are looking at a quick player. We are looking at a playmaker, and obviously you don't get 1,500 yards by accident. Zach, take us through Javian Hawkins.
So I had to defer to Caleb a little bit, my oldest son, because we got into biology, to start this profile off. So he had to learn me some things before I was ready to go through with Javian Hawkins film notes. But if you're not at the top of the food chain, adaptation is necessary for survival. And a mimic octopus has developed chromatophores that shift its skin color to impersonate other animals to avoid predators. Jumping spiders can actually rapidly flex their back leg muscles to leap over 50 times their body's length to escape predators. And Javian Hawkins can accelerate through an open hole faster than a defender can react. Hawkins is so quick to the point of attack, but he's also kind of a crease runner where he doesn't need a lot of space to open up for him to be able to get through to the second level. And although Hawkins is sub 200 pounds, he can actually run inside the tackles. He's got decent contact balance. And when he gets the edge, he uses that long speed to break off huge plays.
Hawkins being a player that, like you said, absolute playmaker, despite his size, and gives you more strength than you'd think with his frame, which is really cool to see. But I'm skeptical because, again, we talked about Michael Carter being someone who's tackled a lot at the line of scrimmage. I do think Hawkins gives a lot more, not that Carter doesn't. He gives a lot more lateral agility than most of the folks that we've talked about this evening. Take me through what are some of the things that maybe hold you back from being more excited about Hawkins?
Yeah, so unfortunately, his speed and quickness don't make up for the flaws in Hawkins' game. His vision, I think, is pedestrian at best. He often misses cutback lanes and ends up in a sea of defenders, which when you're sub 200 pounds, that's not where you want to be. I also think Hawkins is really quick to reverse his field rather than push the line of scrimmage. And that causes a range of problems. Like sometimes it works out and you have this, this great cutback and a long run, but it also contributes to loss of yardage. There are often penalties on his offensive line when that happens. And he also has this habit of carrying the ball in one arm away from his body. And that led to ball security issues for Hawkins in 2020. Like up until 2020, he hadn't put the ball on the ground at all. He had 3 fumbles in just 8 games this year. And although Hawkins appears to be a lock for receiving work, like you said, he only had 21 receptions in his entire career at Louisville. And so, like, you're looking at players who have done it before. He hasn't. The NFL is not a developmental league. And so that is a big concern for me.
Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, we can keep moving from there. It's enough shine for a guy from Louisville for one day. We've got to save some time for when we eventually get to receivers and have to talk about Tutu Atwell, because
Too small.
I think that he deserves the Louisville shine, and I'm done talking about Javian Hawkins. I'm sorry, Kane, if you're listening to this. I know that's your guy. Hawkins, interesting player. Certainly further down the line, not so much. I wouldn't think. Maybe Zach, not in your top 10.
No, I'm with you on that one. He's outside my top 10.
Thanks.
He feels like a guy without a position. He's too small to be a traditional feature back. He doesn't have that pass catching pedigree. Hawkins is probably going to end up generating like micro burst excitement because he'll have a splash play here and there, but it's really hard for me to see him being consistently productive for your fantasy team.
There it is. Last but not least on the evening, wrapping up running backs part 2 here with the Dynasty Dummies. We are looking at touchdown maker himself, Jarrett 1T Patterson, 2 T's, out of Buffalo. Again, a guy listed similar to Javian Hawkins, 5'9", 195. And you probably saw, even if you were living under a rock, even if you weren't paying much attention, you had to have heard at some point this absurd touchdown scoring game that he had this past season, where I believe he put up 8 touchdowns, Zach? 8 touchdowns in 1 week?
Yeah, it was something. He had like 4 1/4 or something. Like, it was just.
I mean, he left Earth. He left Earth. He was an absolute alien. And production for days, over 3,000 yards, almost 4,000 in 3 seasons at Buffalo in the MAC. We saw him get plenty of work as a freshman. We saw him get over 300 carries in his sophomore season in 2019, where he went for 1,799 yards. I'm giving him the extra yard for this. He went for 1,800 yards. And over 3 seasons, he gave you 52 rushing touchdowns. What? Like, that is some absurd stuff. On the flip side, in 3 seasons, he barely made the Zach Reed rule by combining the 3 seasons. That's 20 catches in 3 seasons. And oh, by the way, in the 2020 season, he had 0 catches. Nada, zilch, not a drop. So really, that's the Zach Reed rule in 2 seasons. But Jarrett Patterson, undersized, heck of a ball carrier, playmaker. What do you make of the productive Patterson?
So this was an interesting profile. It was so interesting. The man's so nice. I wrote him up twice before I realized I'd done it, and then I had to kind of make do. But to me, the James Robinson meteor that blazed across fantasy last year, it prompted that redoubled effort to find small school hidden gem running backs. And Jared Patterson isn't a carbon copy, but there are some impressive similarities. Patterson finished with just 165 yards shy of the all-time rushing record at Buffalo, in spite of carrying the ball 230 fewer times than the leader. He also picked up over 6 yards a carry. He scored more than a touchdown and a half per game. That's a lot, right? And averaged over 120 yards a game from scrimmage. Patterson is undersized. BMI Twitter is going to do a lot of ringing over his 28.8 BMI. His smaller frame contributes to a lot of bad habits. He gives up ground to avoid contact. When a defender gets early penetration, Patterson will retreat, kind of desperately trying to find a way out and to gain yards. He's also, like you mentioned, a non-factor in the passing game. And part of this can be explained away by the fact that Buffalo didn't really throw, but that doesn't account for Patterson being removed on 3rd down. It doesn't account for his 0 catch season last year. I think, to me, the phrase, if he who hesitates is lost, is true, then Patterson has a built-in GPS. He runs decisively all the time with vision, both on the interior and outside the tackles. Outside, you saw Patterson pick up chunk yardage, while inside, I think he accelerates very quickly and keeps moving. It's that churn. It's taking contact and keeping himself compact through traffic. He uses jab step cutbacks, spins, and stiff arms to break free from defenders. And Patterson, I really like this. This is something that you see Patriots running backs do. It's something you see Kansas City running backs do. But he'll use a half spin once he's been wrapped to turn his back to the direction that he's going to gain leverage. And that allows him to push to gain extra yards, but it also allows his linemen to get there and give him a little extra bump too. I also think Patterson is particularly adept at the goal line. He gets low and noses his way to the end zone. I mean, look, he scored 1 billion touchdowns. It's what he does.
And the production is something that he's doing while it's all on the ground. It's in a myriad of ways on the ground. It's outside. It's inside. It's long runs. It's short runs. I don't know that he has a calling card. It's almost as though he's like really good at a lot of things, right? What is it? Jack of all trades, master of none, right? And it's really cool to be able to watch him put that to work week after week. The thing that you said early on in your talk, though, just now, Zach, is what really bothered me, and I'm trying to scale this out. If you're in the MAC and you're trying to run away from, and when things kind of fall apart in the backfield, you're losing ground to try to gain ground in the MAC, and this is your for lack of a better word, a calling card of yours on many plays where you're trying to do too much in the MAC.
Yeah.
I'm really, really hesitant to see you be paired in a suboptimal position and really thrive if you're paired with an offensive line that's giving it up to penetration or struggling a lot, because you're not outrunning you're not outrunning defensive linemen in the NFL. You're not outrunning a lot of these groups who are doing that. So that was the thing that for me was just a major bummer to see. But again, I don't want to have that detract from all the good that he does. But take us through some of the things that may not be to your liking regarding Patterson.
Well, that's it. It's always difficult for me to maintain objectivity when there's a player that I really love to watch, because I do. I love watching Jarrett Patterson. He and Kenny Gainwell were the two backs in this class that I just every second of tape I loved watching them play. The problem is there are so many things. He's undersized, so that's tough to reach viability in the NFL. He doesn't catch the passes, which we've already talked about. We've beaten that horse. That's huge. And so you've got a smaller guy who's making all of his plays on the ground. It's really hard to move him up to a point where I'm excited about drafting Jarrett Patterson. If Patterson can find a team willing to take a chance on him, I love his skill set in terms of running the ball. I think he can do things on the ground, but he's not a player that I'm spending a high pick on. You're gonna have to hope he falls and you get him in the 4th and 5th round, very similar to what happened with James Robinson last year.
Oh, I love how you mentioned James Robinson at the end there. People are going to be on your head like, oh, Zach said Jarrett Patterson's the next James Robinson. Look, I gotta take him. I'll take him in the late first now.
I'll tell you the thing that I really hate about this year and missing the combine is for players exactly like Jarrett Patterson. The guys coming out of small conferences. It was what last year when we talked James Robinson and he came out and was at the combine and performed well. You're like, okay, check that off. It wasn't just that he was a better athlete than the guys in his conference. It's that he was an NFL athlete against the guys in his conference. And you're not going to get that with Jarrett Patterson because you're not going to get the combine numbers. If you buy into the pro day numbers, maybe, have at it. But everybody adjusts pro day numbers here and there, and it's hard to get a real gauge on it. And so he's a very tentative I like some of the things that Jarrett Patterson does a lot, but there are a lot of negatives too.
Very well. Another week of running backs in the books. But before I put you in the corner regarding rankings and where these guys land into session for you, is there anyone else in the class in the event that we move on to wide receivers, or is there anyone else in this class that you feel like is noteworthy that we need to shout out regarding these running backs? Because again, in a class where we think the top is pretty good, we don't necessarily love a lot afterwards. That doesn't mean that there's not a lot of these late round darts that you may want to throw. So in the event that we don't have a running backs part 3, are there any particular guys that you just want to give a quick nod to?
There's not, well, like we hit the 12 that I had as the top 12. Like DLF and I are pretty close to, at least with the top 12, not necessarily the order.
Yes.
But we're right there with what we've got. There may be a couple other guys. I do want to shout out Elijah Mitchell out of Louisiana. I'm not done with my write-up of him, but I've watched about 6 games, and he does some really interesting things. He's a player that is definitely on my radar. But that's usually what we tend to do, is do the 2 running back shows, the 2 receiver shows, the combo, because I quarterbacks, tight ends, whatever, and then come back and see if there's anybody that we missed and do a shout out. And that's where we get the audience participation. This is where they yell, oh no, you missed, whoever, and we take that on. So, but I do think Elijah Mitchell is worth giving a little bit of airtime to.
You missed Larry Roundtree. No, we didn't. We didn't, guys. Relax. I do want to give one quick shout out because like you said, we do have the episode where we come back and do a catch-all, if you will. If only he was bigger and not so much of a knucklehead off the field.
Puka
William.
Yeah.
Man, that guy.
Yeah.
You talk, oh my gosh. Burst, talent, speed, electricity, play. He is a playmaker. But again, I'm not going to go down that road right now. We've got the 12 that we talked about. And just like you said, my top 12 also looks the part of the top 12 that you have. And I'm very confident that our orders will not be the same. It's totally okay. But go ahead, Zach, and holding you to this for the rest of the 2021 season and beyond forever. This is on wax. People will come back to this many millennia from now, and they will look back and say, Zach Reed nailed it, or Zach Reed was truly a dummy. So Zach, your top 12, if you will, share with us how you have them ranked between the running backs that we've discussed.
It's usually the second one. It's usually the Zach, you are an absolute dummy, and I embrace the moniker. But right now, today, for my film grades, and this is not a ranking, this is film grades based on what I saw, how I rated their traits. I've got Javonte Williams at 1. I've got Najee Harris at 2. And like I said, they flop daily. So tomorrow you could ask me, and it's Najee. I got Kenny Gainwell at 3. Have a cheeseburger, and I'll be proud to have him there. At 4, I've got Travis Etienne, and depending on Gainwell's size and draft capital, Etienne could move up to 3. I got 5. I've got Jamar Jefferson, because I think there are a lot of things that I really like about his game. At 6, I've got Michael Carter. At 7, I've got Kylan Hill with that upside. At 8, I've got Jarrett Patterson. At 9, and this was a big move this past year to here, Chuba dropped a little bit. I had him, I think, at 7 or 8 last year. He's down to 9. Then I've got Ramondre Stevenson. I've got Javian Hawkins and Trey Sermon at 12, rounding up the end. And I think that's probably going to be the one that people beat me up about, because a lot of people saw Trey Sermon put up in big games on national TV at the end. But to me, he's just another player, just another one of these running backs without pass catching upside. And, I like a couple of these other guys a little bit better.
Very good. Very good. Quick run through of my top 12. I know this is not what you all came here for, but
this is what I came here for.
Since I'm here, I'm going to give it to you anyway. I've been putting in this work, and y'all going to learn today. No, I'm just kidding. So I've got Najee Harris at the top, number 1. I've got Travis Etienne as my 2. And again, I had to swallow a giant bite of humble pie to not have Travis Etienne as my 1. And again, just like Zach said, these are our film grades. These are just the things that we're noticing on film, how we have them graded out. Lots to be determined between now and the actual draft. I've got Javonte Williams at 3, and I've got Javonte Williams nipping at the heels of Travis Etienne very closely. And I think that makes up a very clear tier for me. At number 4, I've got Kenny Gainwell. And this is where the grade kind of drops off pretty heavy for me from just the numbers that I came up with perspective. Yeah. I've got Michael Carter as my 5. I've got Kylan Hill as my 6. I really like Kylan Hill. Relatively speaking, I really like Kylan Hill. I've got Chuba down here at 7. And again, he showed us some things in this last season, even though he wasn't super productive. I did see some improvements that I did like with Chuba. I've got Jermar Jefferson at 8. Ramondre Stevenson, who if he had pass catching chops, he would be a lot higher for me. I'm just going to say that right now. His instincts, his ability to feel for the game, I am a fan. I'm a fan. But he does find himself at 9 in this class for me. I've got Trey Sermon at 10. I've got Javian Hawkins at 11. And I've got Jarrett Patterson at 12. Yeah. Listen, this is the thing. I like Jarrett Patterson a lot. I like a lot of the things that he can do. What I can't wrap my mind around is some of the things that I don't love within his game that he did in the MAC.
Yeah.
I can't, I still don't have a way with my process to really calibrate what that looks like against bigger and better competition, because there's not a lot of tape of him like going up against defenses or teams with higher level competition.
Yeah. So, well, and that's why it's a process. Like that's literally like, I know people kind of make fun of tape grinders for getting ahead of things and getting it out this early. But for me, I want to see what I think of a player, like period, what I think his skill set is, what I think his traits look like. Then you have the combine, and that's just a little bit of a checkpoint, but it's a bigger checkpoint for small school guys just to see that athleticism. So that's where I balance that, what I saw on film in a small conference with his athleticism. And if it comes back that he's, a meh athlete, then obviously that drops him down, because you can't be a mediocre athlete in the NFL and produce like you did in the MAC as a mediocre athlete. It just doesn't happen. But if you're a plus athlete in the MAC and you produce like that, you can still be a plus athlete in the NFL. So that's about the only time when the combine means much to me at all. And then you get draft capital, and then you start pulling together what guys with the numbers saw, and you put that all together, and then you have your rankings. But right now, we're so early in the process, I don't think I would apologize for that at all if it were me. And I'm going to go out and say, don't apologize for your rankings, J. Mike. I like them.
And again, to put you in a corner, Zach, who would you say right now, regardless of where you have them ranked, who's the player that has your interest peaked at this time? Like who's someone that you're really excited about as a player in this class?
Just a running back or
Yeah,
overall?
yeah, it was stick with running backs.
It's Gainwell, man. It's Gainwell, and if he comes in, that's the one thing I'll trust. If he weighs in and he comes in 205 or somewhere in that range, or even a little heavier if he can, because we haven't seen him for an entire year. We don't know what he looks like. If he comes in with that weight and catches the eye of an NFL team, that's the guy that I'm really, really interested in, because the other three, so Javonte Williams, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, they're all great players or good players. I don't want to say great. They're good players. They're all players that I expect to be successful in some capacity in the NFL. Kenny Gainwell is a question to me because I think he has the best pure skills in terms of what I'm looking for in a skill set for a running back in today's NFL, and through that lens of PPR fantasy football. I think he's got the best skill set. But whether or not he's got the body and whether or not he gets the opportunity is really what intrigues me at this point.
All right, everyone. That wraps up the 2021 Dynasty Dummies hootenanny, do-si-do, regarding running backs for this year. We will be moving forward, and I'm going to let Zach choose, and I think I'm pretty confident where we'll be heading next, because quarterbacks and tight ends, who cares? We'll get to y'all when we get to y'all. But this has been a real treat. Hopefully you all have enjoyed this listen as well, and hopefully you are continuing to refine your own processes, refine what you're seeing, and taking the things that we are saying and seeing, and pairing it up against your own processes and figuring out what works for you and how you can be a better dynasty player with the information that you're given.
That's what it's all about. It's all about getting better. It's all about improving. And we don't have our processes static. Like, we're not 100% on anything we do, but every year we're getting better. And if you're out there and listening to this and are interested in what we're doing, shoot me a DM. I'm at Tacit Assassin 13. Feel free. Like, I will talk about this stuff all day. I mean, ask Jay Mike. He can't get me to shut up. I will talk ad nauseum. And if you're interested about the process, if you're interested about what we're seeing, if you're interested about what film we're watching and where we're getting it, like, feel free to jump in the DMs or shoot us a message just on Twitter proper. Like, man, I love talking about this. I appreciate you listening. I'm so glad I've got J Mike riding with me on this too, because he is fantastic, and his eye for film. We don't always see the same things, and that's so important to me, because that's how I get better. If we're agreeing all the time, it's fine. It's great. Like, you get that reinforcement, but we're not getting any better. So that's that's something to keep in mind. If you disagree with somebody, it's not necessarily a battle. It's not an attack. It's not, this is not something that you need to go guns blazing over. Understand where they're coming from. Understand what they're saying. Understand what pieces of it may be value to you, and adjust your process that way, because we're all seeing different things. Even the guys with the metrics, like, nobody's model is the same as somebody else's, and we're all just kind of trying to mitigate failure, and we can best do that when we're all in it together and having these conversations.
Could not have said that any better in a movie script. That was spot on. And with that, it's your boy J Mike on Twitter at JMikeCheck.
And I am at Tacit Assassin 13. Thank you for listening. This has been a DFPN at Work production. We appreciate you listening. Peace. And then find the